Good morning, my friend. Welcome to Breakfast with the Fatman. They say most important meal of the day. Of course, I think that would depend on your scheduling for the day. This is one of those days where I fortunately get to work partly in the morning, then I come back away in the evening and pull a half a night working overnight. You know, that's the way it works sometimes. I just viewed a video last night, a new entry from a fellow called the Humble Gamer, the Humble GM. Sorry, I think it's the Humble GM, and he was more or less ranting on what are the responsibilities of players, and he did an awesome job of describing what he believes is their responsibility. Also, in what he believes the GM's responsibilities or the breakdowns there are, and I would recommend highly that you go visit some of his stuff. He's right on. The topic though boiled down to basically gaming etiquette. Now, I don't know what passes for that sort of thing today, and a lot of people may call it something else. I know that back in the day, a good group of players, a good group of people, regulars, developed this etiquette, if you will, of behaviors and expectations. You know, it's not always fair to meet at the same guy's house every week, and in part because that disrupts the household there. It creates a little bit of chaos and probably a mess afterwards. And the host is under pressure to make sure everything is tidy or clean, at least reasonably so. Perhaps even supply some snacks and munchies as and instead to come, I guess. Although in my previous groups, we always more or less was bring your own. The other expectations, of course, is that the player is going to come with some sense of being prepared, some made some effort before sitting down at the table, and that also includes in bringing the proper equipment. Now, it's not always up to the GM to provide the dice or one specific player to provide all the books. Now, I will grant you that books are expensive. There's one that's one of the factors that cause some people to be GMs more than others. I think it's one thing to be able to have a couple books. It's another thing to sit there and keep buying book after book after book for a given system, and having access to all that stuff when you need it. Well, it's nice. I mean, as a player, I'm a little better prepared. This leads into the rule doctor mindset, but I am a little bit prepared because I own every book that the GM's going to own, more or less. And traditionally, if he got a book I didn't have, I got curious enough to go looking for the book because I like to have a complete set whenever possible. Sometimes even when it feels like I'm just throwing money after money away after frivolous stuff. Now uh, general consensus is that you should have your own dice. If possible, I've always said if there's a player's manual for the particular game system that you're playing in, it'd be nice if you own your own player's manual. And this solves time issues at the table itself because. I mean, how many games have you been in where everybody needs to use something and there's only one copy of it? Now, ideally, you could make copies of the copy and hand it around and give everybody pertinent information. And I've done that before. If a player is new to the game system and doesn't have the book necessary, or it's just more convenient to give him crib notes, I will take the book and in the back in the day that meant going to a store that had a copying machine, paying to have pages copied out of it so I could give it to this individual, and that was money out of my pocket, and it didn't get reimbursed usually. Though etiquette would suggest that if somebody spends $2 to copy stuff, give them the $2. It's a little gesture, but that little gesture goes a long way in keeping a good mindset, keeping the spirit going. Um, the another part of that etiquette to me was when the game was over, the session was over for the day. I always volunteered to help clean up a little bit, help tidy, help put the chairs away, rearrange the furniture if that's necessary. If they didn't, the host didn't need it or didn't want that, then I was still gracious enough to try to pick up some trash and at least make an effort to show them I appreciated the efforts that they went to make the evening as enjoyable in the background setting. We don't think of that sometimes. We just sort of hurry to sit down and get into the meat of the game, and we tend to forget that there are the real world realities that work around us. Now, and that includes the extended family of the host. You know, come on, how many have gone to a place where somebody's kids in the background yelling or screaming and always interrupting, or the wife's not a gamer, or the husband's not a gamer in that case, and they're tolerating the the fad or the fetish of their spouse. And here we are, a bunch of oddballs that may or may not be friends with the spouse in that person's home, invading their space for an evening or an afternoon, and try to keep that in mind that we're still guests in that residence, even if we are friends with them, we're still guests. You know, we're not spending time there. We're not living there. Although sometimes I've had players that just felt that's pretty much what they were doing. They came over to pursue the library, if you will, because I was always leery of having the lending library mindset. I'm sorry, but I spent a lot of money for these things, and I don't mean to be rude, but I can't loan out the books. I've done that in the past, unless it's somebody that I very very heavily trust, and in the process have an exchange with program of sorts with them. I just say no, and it's not to be rude or to be mean. It's to be practical. When you spend as much money as you do to buy these books, uh, giving them or loaning them, it's like loaning tools. You're risking that the tool's not coming back, or it's going to come back damaged somehow, or not quite the same as it was before. That was one of the reasons, I guess, that set me out when I was younger, buying my own. When my best friend, when I was growing up, his older brother had the original D&D stuff and hidden in his basement, and we snuck in. Wednesdays, we got out of elementary school before the high school boys did, an hour earlier, hour and a half, and so we'd sneak into his house and we'd play that D&D for an hour every week, and for that first winter. And then when the opportunity came up to go with somebody else to the Ivers game store to purchase my own, well, Jesus, I had to go. And once I discovered, oh my, I could order this stuff through the mail too. It did make it so we eventually were able to play it far more often because I had the stuff we needed. And then he bought some of his own stuff, and it progressed from there. We get into that question of etiquette again. You know, what is the responsibilities of a player? Well, I think the humble GM has done a good job of explaining that, and I don't need to go into great detail. But we'll top the basics. Preparedness, know your character as best you can, have done your homework a little bit, come in with a good mindset to play, and own your own dice. Come on, you can get a decent set of cheap dice and keep them in a little bag or in a baggie, whatever it takes, and stash them in the glove box of your car. I've done that. I've had several stashes of dice over the years because I just never know when I was going to need them. Didn't set out that evening to go gaming and end up, having an impromptu game with somebody. It happens. It's just like the GM. There's a lot of expectations on the GM, other than just coming up with the entertainment, so to speak. Just the GM's job to have the proper tools, if you will. The GM can't come up with the right kind of stuff to do the job. You just can't run the game as well as you could. Do you need every book? No, of course not. But you do need the basics. You need your own dice. Bumming your dice off of some of your player friends all the time. That's kind of lame. It always was kind of lame. It's like asking your friend for $5 every time you turn around. It gets annoying after a while. It's not that they can't or that they necessarily won't loan you the money. It's just the idea. Go buy your own, for Pete's sake. Etiquette. We have that. It's not a word that us men folk tend to banter around too heavily, but it is and does serve a purpose. I think if you go into somebody's home, have that I'm a guest mindset from the beginning. Even if you're good friends with this person, or you're related to this person, you're still a guest in their house. Familiar, what they call it, familiarity breeds contempt. That sometimes leads into another topic of off game topic stuff, and that I guess would be another session, another ranting, if you will. Then we won't get hammered and stuff into this one. But it's the nature of our personality sometimes to take things for granted, and especially if you've been gaming a long time and with the same group of people, you start to get very familiar. And keep on your toes a little bit, folks. Be polite,